Hi folks, and welcome to this week's video tutorial. This would be bot 11 from Dubious positions and how to attack them. Again, this would be a continuation of the same direction cannons series. So without further ado, let us begin. Central cannon, same direction cannons. Red will use the file Chariot, and in this bot, Black would counter with the Deferred Chariot variation, whereby usually Black would develop his Chariot for the third move, but instead in this variation, Black would play p7 plus 1 so that Red cannot play p3 plus 1. Now this opening variation has become a system of its own, and it started to appear in matches in China in I think the late 1970s and quickly caught on. So it has a slightly different temperament from the other same direction cannon variations. So I'll leave this section to the opening bots, which will be done in due time. But for the time being, Black has played p7 plus 1, which is considered to be an orthodox move. Red would usually counter likewise, so that he can develop his left horse as a proper horse to counter Black's proper horse. Now, Black would play c2 plus 4 in this variation, which is sometimes seen, and Red will continue to develop his horse as he goes h8 plus 7 as a proper horse, which Black would play c2 equals to 3 to prevent the development of this horse. Now, this is the position of discussion for this board, whereby in this board, Black would use the cannon to try to delay the development of the red horses so that he can make some gains in terms of tempi. Now, the title of this board was called, not of the utmost importance or not of the most top priority at this point. Now, at this point in time, this will be only the fifth move, whereby opening theory or modern Xiangqi opening theories was recommend that you try to develop as many major pieces as possible. Now, on its own, stopping the development of this or hindering the development of the left horse might seem okay, but this is done at the expense of development of Black's pieces, because as can be seen in this position here, Red would have developed both horses, pushed the pawn forward. The chariot was now in the open. Black had developed neither chariots, and his entire right flank was undeveloped, and the issue of this horse would become a major concern, because Red had already pushed p7 plus 1, so developing this horse as a proper horse would not be a good idea, but developing it as an edge horse would not do much. And besides, the cannon had already left the cannon rank, so the protection of this horse would also become an issue. So there were many hidden problems with this move. So this would be the topic of discussion for this board. Instead, a better move would be to play h2 plus 3 to develop the horse as a proper horse, whereby Black can develop his chariots, etc. as need be for balanced development of the pieces. So faced with this dubious position, Red would usually continue with r2 plus 4. Now this would appear to be a dull and boring or matter-of-fact move, but in reality this is a brilliant move, because the chariot will now target the cannon over here, and there'll be many tactical combinations for Red to continue. Now, would r9 equals to 8 be a good idea? The answer would be no, because Black would play h2 plus 3, c8 plus 9, and Black would be poised for a counter attack. The cannon at this point, because of Red's r9 equals to 8, would actually become very efficient. Red cannot advance to threaten the cannon, or the Black cannon would simply capture the elephant to deliver a check and gain the material in the process. So this is not a good idea. Instead, r2 plus 4 would be a better idea, whereby the chariot will still be protecting the elephant over here. Now, Black had to try to force a trade of material. Now, at this point, h2 plus r9 equals to 8 was played. If not, if he played h2 plus 3 instead, black would now trade material, and this horse will now be free to attack. And a very obvious attack would be to play h4 plus 6, whereby this would be a fork on both the black cannon and chariot in the same file. And once the horse reached here, they could go for the elbow horse attack, etc. And the black would have an unassailable lead. So h2 plus 3 is not a good idea. Instead, r9 equals to 8 to force the trade of chariots would be imperative, so that red cannot push his pawn forward to trade pawns and allow his horse to attack. And if red were allowed to play p3 plus 1, this cannon would now have like a target to attack, and it will put the black cannon in trouble also. So red will usually refuse the trade. And at this point in time, he will play r2 equals to 6, threatening to play r6 minus 1 to gain material. So there are two horses guarding the central pawn, so capturing the central pawn will not be a viable alternative. So that is why black is forced to play c3 equals to 7. Now, to capture the enemy pawn, this would appear to be an okay move, because now black would actually target the elephant, and there's the chariot over here preparing to attack. However, red will simply play e3 plus 1 to prevent this from happening, and also prevent the black pawn from crossing the river. So black would try to take the opportunity to develop his right flank, but as can be seen, development of the horse to this at this point does not seem to be a good idea. And red will now develop his chariot in this manner. Now, no fault can be found with this move, although another viable option of h7 plus 8 is also good. Now, r9 equals to 8 would actually try to trick black into moving the chariot, as will be seen. So that sorry, this will be the position of discussion, and at this point in time, there are two major variations that were discussed. The first will be r1 equals to 2, and the other will be c5 equals to 6. In variation A, r1 equals to 2 is played, which might seem to be a matter-of-fact move, but red would have something up his sleeves. He would play p7 plus 1 to sacrifice the pawn. Now, obviously, black cannot allow the pawn to advance. Otherwise, this pawn will wreak a lot of trouble on this flank. And with 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces preparing to storm this flank, this simply cannot happen. So this is a very vicious play. Now, at this point in time, okay, let's say if red played c8 plus 4, it would appear to be a very good move, but black would simply counter with a6 plus 5, and instead red's attack will be halted immediately, and black would not find himself in jeopardy, because now his advisor had moved. There was enough defense along the central line, and there will not be much that black can do for the moment. So p7 plus 1 would be a better move. So obviously black would have to capture the pawn, but in doing so, red would now move h7 plus 8 to develop his horse, threatening to capture the chariot. And black can only play r2 equals to 1. Now, if black tried to make a play of other moves, for example h3 plus 2, red would have many tactical options. The first would be h8 plus 6, threatening to capture the chariot, and also now there will be the threat of playing h6 plus 7 to threaten the chariot, and also go for the checkmate. Black could lose the chariot in the process. Another possible option would be to play, let's say h8 plus 7, h3 plus 2 will play. Black could simply capture the cannon. If black countered, there's always c5 equals to 8, and black could now lose the chariot. If he moved the pawn forward, it would be captured, the elephant would be in trouble, and red would have a significant advantage as 4 major pieces would be ready to storm this empty flank. So black would have a hard time trying to deal with these attacks by black, and that is why r2 equals to 1 would be the better move in this situation. But in doing so, black would have lost some tempo. So red would usually continue with c equals to 7 to target the horse. By sacrificing the pawn in this manner, black hopes to try to slow down the pace of red's attack. But are there any other viable counters? Let us see. Okay, so would h3 plus 2 be a viable option? Let us see. Red will attack with h6 plus 7, threatening to go for a fork by capturing the pawn. Let's say black tried to trade material. Red will first capture the horse and then go for the fork. If black tried to protect, red will now annihilate the other pawn. b7 plus 9 to try to chase the chariot away, otherwise r8 equals to 2 will be present, and red will simply play r3 equals to 1, but we can see that black's formation has collapsed into a mess. Red would now be eyeing the elephant, and if it moved, the central cannon would be in jeopardy, and there's always the threat of c5 plus 4, so red would have a huge lead by this time, so that is why h3 plus 2 is not viable. Now r1 plus 2 to protect the horse, would it be a viable option? Red could play h8 plus 6 followed by h3 to force the horse away, and red will follow with i plus 8 preparing to attack the centroid horse. Now black would have a hard time dealing with this attack. Also, instead of h8 plus 6, h8 plus 7 would also be a viable option, threatening the chariot. Let's say black tried to trade material. After the trade, s6 equals to 8 will be played, and the cannon can only be forced to move here. Red could advance the chariot over here to attack, and again, black's formation will collapse into a huge mess. Therefore, r1 equals to 2, h3 plus 2 are both not viable, and that was why black tried to fight fire with fire or fight tooth for tooth with this move. However, red will continue with r6 equals to 7, forcing the horse away and delivering a check. And after delivering a check, red will niftily retreat his horse. And as can be seen, this move would provide some defense and also offense, because red can now play c7 equals to 8, which is protected by the chariot to attack. Now red would have the obvious advantage. So this would be variation A. So let us see variation B. c5 equals to 6 as black attempts to readjust his formation. Now this would be his approach, whereby he would take a defensive approach, a defensive stance, and adopt a wait and see approach, trying to deal with red's incoming attack. Now this policy is customary when faced with disadvantageous situations, and with c5 equals to 6, there's always the option of playing h7 plus 6 to try to dislodge the red chariot. But of course, red would not want that to happen, and he will play r6 equals to 4 as a series of tiny neat moves. Although it would appear that red would have moved the chariot several times, but this was done in response to black also having moved the cannon 1 or 2 times, so there was no loss in the tempo. Now, making this move would also prevent any sneak attempts to play hc6 plus 5. So black's potential tactical combinations would be snuffed out, and his hopes of forming or constructing a counter defense will now be completely crushed. a6 plus 5, and red will continue to attack with c8 plus 5 to force a trade of cannons. Now this is a very proactive approach, whereby red would now grow strength to strength. Now, this is somewhat out of the ordinary, but very useful in this situation. Now, we will play e3 plus 5. Now, would accepting the trade be a good idea? Let us see. Red will refuse to trade chariots. Instead, he'll retreat and capture the pawn and still place tons of pressure on this file. And we can see that development-wise, Red's right horse would be a major weakness, and this would be a primary target for attack, and Red would have many tactical combinations available. Whereas at this point in time, Black would not be able to do much with his cannon and horse at this point. So e3 plus 5 is advocated, but now the red horse will be free to do damage. Is prepared to attack central file, etc. And since the black chariot protected the central pawn, red will capture the other pawn and is prepared to play h7 plus 5 to trade his horse for 2 elephants and attack. Now black will face a lot of problems on defense, and red, it is very obvious that red would have the huge advantage. Now, in this board, the key idea or the key lesson to be learned would be that development of the material in the early stages, especially the fifth ply, is very important, because if you did not develop your material, the enemy will, and once the important lines are controlled, you will fall further behind in development and be in tons of trouble. So as can be seen in the variation B's final variation. Now, in continuation of this point, red would advance his chariot to the riverbank. So red would advance the chariot to the riverbank with r2 plus 4 to start a series of counter attacks targeting the cannon that has just moved. So this would lead to the position of discussion eventually, and after several moves, the red chariot was still very active on the riverbank and would cause tons of trouble. So let us review the game from the eyes of black. Okay, let me switch the colors a little bit. Okay, central cannon, same direction cannons, ranked chariot, foul chariot, and deferred chariot. Dubious moves, c2 equals to 3, which caused black to fall far behind in the development of the right flank. 2 plus 4, a brilliant counter. 9 equals to 8 to prevent p3 plus 1 from happening. Of course, red will not trade chariots, and black is forced to move the cannon. And after moving here, in all the variations, this cannon will not move again. So the validity or the efficiency of this move, it would be highly questioned. e3 plus 1, h2 plus 3, and red would develop his chariot in this move. Another viable option would be h7 plus 8. r1 plus 2, and at this point in time, variation A, r1 plus r equals to 2, sorry, p7 plus 1 to sacrifice the pawn, and h7 plus 8 to attack the chariot, forcing back home, and red will grow from strength to strength, and after capturing the elephant, red will retreat his horse for defense, but now the cannon is very powerful. She's sorry, c7 equals to 8 will cause tons of trouble. Variation B, c5 equals to 6 to try to dislodge the red chariot and also go for a sneak attempt for a cannon ping, would be black's attempt in variation B. Now r6 equals to 4 will snuff out these two potential attacks. a6 plus 5, c8 plus 5 to attack. And after more maneuvering, we can see it's very obvious that black was under lots of trouble. And at this point, only one cannon had crossed the river for attack, and there was no clear target. Whereas whereas red's pieces had clear targets for attack and were prepared to do much damage. So I hope you've enjoyed this short video. If you like the work that I've been doing, please do subscribe to my channel and give me a thumbs up for this video. Thank you.